For me, a good auntie is someone who's a role model, who doesn't ask you to conform to the social norms, and who has the wherewithal to support you when you're struggling with those social norms. I am in the film this can of worms that no one wants to even acknowledge exists. And as you know, the story is so much about the mother and daughter, but without my part, Bhairavi, they wouldn't really get to know each other truly. And for me, Bhairavi is an auntie that like I wish I had growing up, who will tell me what was what, not sugarcoat things, not be bogged down by what society expects you to do, who can really look at you and be like, yeah, this is what it is, what you see does suck, and what are you going to do about it? So I just feel so thrilled that I got to play this part. Oh, there's so many moments. For me, I don't know if you remember, there's a moment in the store, India Sweets and Spices, when one of my customer tries to kind of play one-upmanship and tries to diss the choices that I and my family have made. And I was just thinking about that moment the other day, and it's like so many times we all experience that, in some form or fashion in our lives. And, we always go back afterwards, we're like, oh, I should have said this, I should have said this, I should have said this. And that moment for me was just very satisfying. It encapsulated so much of the core of the story for me and what I in the film do stand for, even though it's not easy, but that tension of what you stand for and what is expected of you, to climb the social ladder. It not only is it not acknowledged, you're expected to get with the program. And if you say you don't care, then you're a slacker, you're lazy, you're not hardworking, you have no ambition, you're good for nothing in your life. And you're like, wait, how come those are the only two options? Growing up in India, in Delhi, I didn't have a lot of role models who would stand up to patriarchy. I was surrounded by a lot of women who were struggling with it, but then didn't have the tools to have any agency. And so for me in this part, I got to have that. I got to live from that with pride and like not throw it in people's face, but to have that like, yeah, I've made a life. And it does not follow all of your social norms. And that just felt great. Like, to inhabit that was awesome. First time at Tribeca, yes. And they're celebrating their 20-year anniversary, and I'm celebrating my 20 years in the US. It is incredible. I used to live in New York, and I never obviously went to Tribeca. And now that I've been in LA, to get to go back, and I remember my first time I went to New York. I grew up in Delhi. The first time I went to New York was December of 2001. And I obviously never got to see the Twin Towers. And I got out and kind of landed in New York, and there was something about the city that I was like, oh, I can live in this city. This feels like my speed. And so to go back and celebrate this film coming out is incredible. Difficult question. When I lived in New York, after a few years, I started to have a love-hate relationship with New York. There were things about it that I just loved. Like I remember one night I was finishing a rehearsal and walking down 7th Avenue, and suddenly I hear music just like wafting through the streets, and I was like, oh, and I followed it like a siren was pulling me, and there was this guy at Herald Square, he's just doing his thing. There was a crowd, and we were all just like, we stopped all of our rushing, and there we were, just like taking in the music. And for me, those things were just really beautiful. And then, of course, I lived in Queens, in Sunnyside, and the 7 train has a lot of aunties. And some of those aunties can be vicious when it's like rush hour and it's like you have to get into the train or get out of the train. And I was like, oh man, like, can we all just take a breath and calm down? But then in LA, the weather is, I mean, incredible. I keep telling my son, like, be grateful for this blue sky that you get to see every day. And we get to have a backyard. And I think having a kid in New York would have been really difficult. So it just depends on where you are in life. I think both cities are incredible and have a lot to give. GiveIndia.org, I think, is the organization that a lot of my colleagues and all of us have come behind. And a situation, I don't know. I mean, I talk to my parents every day. They live in Delhi and they are just recovering from COVID. So I hear all kinds of things and people are restless. They're just really, I don't know. They're, especially the elderly who have to be by themselves at home. None of us are safe until all of us are safe. Like, this virus has really shown us that. And so I feel like I'm in Twilight Zone sometimes, because here things are opening up and everyone's like, hey, let's meet up. And over there, it's like in the opposite direction. So I feel like I wake up to news from there, then I spend my day here, and then I go to bed to information from there. So just to be mindful that, just because things in our nook of the world are better, we're not all better yet. And I don't know. Just, I think that is important to keep in mind. June 12th is the in-person premiere. And then starting June 13th, in the US only, you can watch it at home. So if you go to Tribeca Film Festival's website, look for the film, it'll have a link there for you to buy tickets to watch it at home starting June 13th. But that's how we can all watch it. I'll watch along with everybody else.